Laura Quint paced the length of the conference room aboard Harmony's edge, her boots silent on the polished metal floor. Her mind raced as she prepared to confront a room full of the galaxy's most influential leaders. Her assistant, a wiry young man named Jiro, adjusted the data pads on the table, his hands trembling slightly. "Do you think they'll listen to us, Lara?" Jiro asked, his voice barely a whisper against the hum of the station's life support systems. Lara stopped and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "They have to, Jiro. The future of humanity might depend on it." She squared her shoulders and checked her reflection in the window, the stars beyond serving as a stark reminder of the vastness of their responsibilities. The door hissed open, and a stream of delegates from various races began to fill the room, their forms ranging from the insect clicks of the Thelkin to the graceful, fluid movements of the aquatic Sulfurians. Lara greeted each with a nod, her demeanor calm and diplomatic. As the room settled, Admiral Vorek entered, his towering figure clad in the ornate armor of the Kirax military. His eyes, like shards of ice, fixed on Lara as he made his way to his seat at the head of the table. "Let's begin," he announced, his voice booming across the room. "This council is now in session." Lara took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, we are here today because the very fabric of our universe is under threat. Not just from external enemies, but from the seeds of distrust and aggression that have been sown among us." Murmurs filled the room as Lara continued. "The Kirax Dominion has claimed that the recent skirmishes along the Terran border are acts of aggression by human forces. I am here to present evidence to the contrary." She tapped her data pad, and images flashed across the room's central holodisplay. They showed Kirax ships, disguised as human vessels, attacking a peaceful Thelkin colony. "The evidence is irrefutable," Lara stated, her voice steady. "These are acts of provocation designed to justify an unjust war against humanity." Admiral Vorek rose, his stature imposing. "These accusations are preposterous. Humanity is known for its deceit. We do not accept these manipulated images as evidence." Before Lara could respond, Councillor Thill intervened. "If we may, let's hear all sides before passing judgment. Peace has always been the Council's mandate." Lara nodded to Thill, grateful for the support. "Thank you, Councillor. As you all know, the Kirax have greatly benefited from their position within the Council, obtaining resources and territories that were once open to all. We have to ask ourselves why they would fabricate such attacks?" The room buzzed with whispered conversations and heated debates among the delegates. Lara's words had struck a chord, and she knew this was her chance. "We propose a neutral investigation into these incidents," Lara continued. "Let representatives from non-involved races oversee the process. We must ensure that justice is served, and peace maintained." Vorek's face contorted with anger. "You question the honor of the Kirax Dominion? You invite war with these baseless accusations." Lara met his gaze, unflinching. "No, Admiral. We invite clarity and justice. We have no desire for war. But make no mistake, we will defend ourselves if pushed." Jiro handed her another data pad, this one with intercepted communications between Kirax officers discussing the operation. Lara displayed them to the Council, her evidence mounting. "As you can see, this is not just a misunderstanding. It's a deliberate act to escalate tensions and create a war that the Kirax believe they can win." The Council erupted into chaos, with races taking sides, some calling for immediate action against the Kirax, others cautioning patience and further investigation. Councillor Thill called for order. "We will adjourn for today and reconvene tomorrow after reviewing the evidence presented. I urge everyone to consider the implications of our next actions carefully." As the delegates filed out, Lara and Jiro exchanged a look. They had made their play, and now it was up to the Council to decide the galaxy's fate. Lara knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger and diplomacy. But as she looked out at the stars, she felt a resolve settle within her. Humanity had found its voice in the galaxy, and she would do everything in her power to ensure it was heard. Lara stood before the gathered delegates, her presence commanding silence as the room's tension thickened. The evidence was laid out, her case against the Kirax Dominion clear and damning, but she knew that facts alone wouldn't sway the council to act. She needed to appeal to their deeper convictions, their sense of unity and justice. "Esteemed members," Lara began, her voice echoing with a resonant calm that belied her racing thoughts. "We stand at a precipice. The evidence before you is not just a collection of incidents, it's a mirror reflecting the future we face should we choose the path of inaction." Across from her, Admiral Vorek's scowl deepened, his hands clenched into fists on the tabletop. His disdain for diplomacy was palpable, his desire for domination clear. But Lara focused on the others, those whose minds were not yet made up. "We are a diverse council, representing thousands of worlds and billions of lives. Each of us has sworn an oath to protect the integrity of our Federation and the peace it upholds. Can we, in good conscience, ignore such a blatant attempt to destabilize that peace?" A murmur ran through the room, some voices of agreement, others of hesitation. Lara continued, her gaze sweeping across the faces of her audience. "I do not stand here to indict the Kirax people or to provoke conflict. I stand for truth. For the principle that no one, no matter how powerful, is above the law that binds us as a federation." She paused, letting her words sink in before she turned slightly to address Admiral Vorek directly. "Admiral, you are a warrior. You know the value of honor in battle. Is there honor in the deception we've unveiled? In leading your people into a war based on falsehoods?" Vorek stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You overstep, human," he growled. "The Kirax Dominion needs no lessons in honor from lesser races." Lara held his gaze, her stance steady. "This isn't about superiority, Admiral. It's about survival. All of ours. War will devastate sectors, cripple economies, and end countless lives, both human and Kirax." She turned back to the council. "I urge you to authorize a neutral investigation team. Let them verify the facts. If we are wrong, we will accept the consequences. But if we are right, we must act together, as a unified council, to avert a crisis that threatens us all." Councillor Thill, a slender, gray-skinned Nalori, raised a hand. "Diplomat Quint speaks of unity and investigation. Wise words. We, the Nalori, support this call. Truth must light our way forward." One by one, other delegates began to voice their support. The tide was turning, but the outcome was far from certain. As the session adjourned for the day, Lara felt the weight of the moment. Jiro met her at the door, his face etched with concern. "That was risky, Lara. Confronting Vorek directly, are you sure that was wise?" She sighed, her eyes weary but resolute. "It was a calculated risk, Jiro. Sometimes, to build peace, you have to stand firm on the battleground of ideals." That evening, as Lara reviewed her notes and prepared for the next day, messages began to arrive from various sectors of the galaxy. News of her speech had spread, igniting debates on hundreds of worlds about the role of truth and justice in galactic governance. Back on the station, as the stars wheeled silently overhead, Lara couldn't shake the feeling of impending conflict. She knew that no matter how persuasive her arguments, the real test would come not from words but from the will to enforce them. As dawn broke over the station, Lara readied herself for the Council's decision day. The corridors of Harmony's Edge buzzed with whispers and hurried steps. Delegates convened in small groups, their discussions fervent and secretive. Lara entered the council chamber with a quiet determination. Today would define the future of the galaxy. As the members settled into their seats, a hush fell over the room. Councillor Thill stood, his voice clear and steady. "After considerable deliberation and consultation, we propose a vote. Those in favor of forming an independent investigation team, as Diplomat Quint suggested, please signify." One by one, lights on the council table lit up, casting a constellation of hope across the chamber. Lara held her breath, counting each point of light. The final tally was clear, the motion had passed, but just barely. Admiral Vorek's face was a mask of contained fury. "This is not the end, human. You have won nothing today but the illusion of victory." Lara allowed herself a small, tired smile. "Sometimes, Admiral, Illusions are necessary to reveal the truth. As the delegates filed out, the future remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: Lara Quint and humanity had not only claimed their place at the galactic table, they had shifted its balance. Now the hard work would begin. As the council convened again, Lara Quint faced the assembled leaders with a mixture of resolve and apprehension. The decision to form an investigation team had been narrowly won, but the real challenge lay ahead, implementing it in a way that would lead to actionable results without escalating tensions further. "Thank you, members of the council, for your trust in the path of due diligence," Lara began, her voice steady despite the undercurrent of opposition that murmured through the chamber. "To ensure transparency and fairness, the investigation will be led by representatives from 3 nonpartisan races, with oversight from an independent galactic judiciary body." Admiral Vorek, his posture rigid with barely contained hostility, spoke next. "The Kirax Dominion will cooperate, but mark my words, this is a farce aimed at undermining our sovereignty. We will not tolerate any overreach into our affairs." Lara acknowledged his concerns with a nod. "We respect the sovereignty of all council members. The investigation will focus solely on the incidents in question. Nothing more." The tension in the room was palpable as Lara outlined the scope and rules of the investigation. Each point was meticulously designed to prevent any loopholes that could be exploited for political gain. As the meeting progressed, Lara fielded questions and concerns from various delegates, her diplomacy deftly balancing the thin line between assurance and assertiveness. Her goal was clear: keep the council united in the pursuit of truth, without letting the process devolve into political infighting. The session drew to a close with a tentative consensus on the investigation's framework. Lara felt a fleeting sense of accomplishment, but the weight of the task ahead was overwhelming. As the delegates dispersed, she caught the eye of Councillor Thill, whose nod conveyed a silent message of support. Back in her office, Lara convened with her closest advisors, including Jiro, who had been instrumental in gathering the initial evidence. "We need to prepare for every possible outcome," Lara told them. "If the investigation confirms our claims, we'll need to be ready to push for serious consequences, despite the Kirax's threats." "And if it doesn't?" Jiro asked, his voice tinged with worry. "Then we must be ready to make concessions and work to restore trust," Lara replied. "Either way, our approach must be balanced and thoughtful. This isn't just about proving a point, it's about shaping the future of galactic diplomacy." The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. Lara worked tirelessly, coordinating with the investigation team, briefing them on the nuances of the case, and ensuring they had access to all relevant data. Simultaneously, she engaged in quiet diplomacy, soothing frayed nerves and building alliances that could help ratify the investigation's findings, regardless of the outcome. As the investigation neared its conclusion, the political atmosphere grew increasingly charged. Rumors swirled through the corridors of Harmony's Edge, some claiming that the evidence was irrefutable, others alleging that it had been tampered with by human sympathizers. Lara knew that the report's release would be a critical moment. She arranged to present the findings in a full council session, ensuring that all members would hear the truth simultaneously, directly from the source. The day of the presentation arrived, and the council chamber was packed with delegates, their aides, and observers from across the galaxy. The air was thick with anticipation and anxiety. The lead investigator, a respected jurist from the neutral Midari Confederacy, took the floor. "After an exhaustive review, we have found substantial evidence that not only corroborates Diplomat Quint's claims but also reveals a deeper pattern of provocation by the Kirax Dominion." A collective gasp filled the room, followed by an uproar as delegates reacted to the shocking revelation. Admiral Vorek stood, fury contorting his features. "This is an outrage. We reject these findings entirely." Lara waited for the noise to subside before she spoke. "We all pledge to abide by the outcome of this investigation. I urge everyone to consider the evidence and its implications. We face a choice today, to stand by our principles or to let fear and deception guide our decisions." Her words seemed to resonate, calming the storm of reactions. After intense debate and deliberation, the council voted overwhelmingly to impose sanctions on the Kirax Dominion, a decision that would reshape the power dynamics within the Federation. As the chamber cleared, Lara felt a mix of relief and sorrow. The victory was bittersweet, having exposed the fractures within their union. Yet she knew that this was just the beginning of a long journey toward a more stable and just galaxy. In her heart, Lara believed that the path to peace was never through silence but through the courage to confront the truth, no matter how difficult. And as she looked out at the stars from her office window, she was more resolved than ever to guide humanity on this noble path. With the Council's decision solidifying around the evidence presented, the weight of their verdict began to ripple through the corridors of power across the galaxy. Yet the real test of Lara Quint's leadership was just beginning. As she prepared for the enforcement of sanctions and the likely backlash from the Kirax Dominion, Lara remained a beacon of calm and resolve. In a crucial meeting with her team, Lara laid out the next steps. The sanctions are a necessary response, but they are not an end in themselves. We must use this moment to foster stronger alliances and promote a deeper commitment to the Council's ideals. Jiro, now more confident in his role, presented a strategy to communicate with the member worlds, emphasizing transparency and the Council's dedication to peace and stability. It's about showing that we are proactive, not just reactive. We need to highlight the benefits of compliance and the risks of isolation, he explained. Lara approved the plan and tasked her team with its immediate implementation. Make it clear that this isn't about punishing the Kirax people but about protecting the values we all stand for. As the sanctions began to take effect, Lara's diplomatic acumen was put to the test. She reached out to Admiral Vorek for a private communication, an attempt to bridge the growing chasm between their factions. The conversation was terse, with Vorek expressing his disdain for what he perceived as a betrayal by the Council. "Admiral, I understand your frustrations," Lara said, maintaining her composure. "But we cannot ignore the actions that led us here. I still believe there is a path to reconciliation and coexistence." Vorek was unconvinced, his response sharp and bitter. "You speak of coexistence while you choke us with sanctions? You may have swayed the Council, but you will not cow the Kirax Dominion." Despite the tension, Lara kept the door open for dialogue. "The Council's decision is not irreversible, Admiral. Compliance with the sanctions and a commitment to transparency can pave the way for a review and eventual lifting of the measures." With diplomacy ongoing, Lara faced challenges on other fronts. Reports of unrest and protests on various Kirax planets reached her desk, highlighting the human cost of political decisions. Lara was deeply troubled by these developments, understanding that every action had its repercussions. Determined to mitigate the impact, Lara convened a series of meetings with humanitarian organizations and other non-aligned planets to organize relief efforts. "We must provide support where it's needed most," she insisted. "This isn't just about enforcing sanctions. It's about sustaining a community in the galaxy that cares for its members." These efforts were met with mixed reactions. While many praised her for her compassion and leadership, others viewed it as a weakening of the Council's resolve. Lara knew, however, that her approach had to balance strength with empathy, a philosophy that had guided her through many crises. As the situation evolved, an unexpected message arrived from a minor Kirax commander, requesting a secret meeting. The commander, who wished to remain anonymous, offered valuable intelligence on a faction within the Kirax military that was equally discontented with Vorek's aggressive policies. Seeing an opportunity, Lara arranged a covert rendezvous. The meeting was fraught with risk, but it yielded a deeper insight into the fractures within the Kirax Dominion. The commander provided documents that detailed plans by hardline elements to escalate the conflict, regardless of the Council's actions. Armed with this new information, Lara returned to the Council, presenting her findings in a closed session. "This isn't about one race against another," she argued. "It's about extremists who seek to profit from chaos. We have allies within the Kirax who desire peace as fervently as we do." The revelation led to a nuanced shift in the Council's strategy, focusing more on isolating the hardliners while strengthening ties with moderates within the Dominion. Lara advocated for targeted sanctions that would pressure the warmongers without unduly harming the civilian population. As weeks turned into months, the galaxy watched as Lara Quint navigated the treacherous waters of galactic politics with an unwavering commitment to peace and justice. Her efforts to balance firmness with diplomacy slowly began to bear fruit, as more moderate voices emerged from within the Kirax ranks, calling for a reassessment of their stance. Through it all, Lara remained dedicated to the idea that true leadership was about making the hard choices that could lead to a better future, not just for humanity but for all races of the galaxy. Her vision of a council that acted as a true union of its members, respecting each other's sovereignty while upholding common values, became a beacon for those who believed in the possibility of a peaceful galaxy. The road ahead was still long and fraught with challenges, but Lara Quint had already demonstrated that with perseverance and principled leadership, even the most daunting of conflicts could be navigated towards a hopeful horizon. Lara Quint sat in the dimly lit strategy chamber, her hands clasped before her, as she listened to the reports flooding in from various sectors. The Council's sanctions had begun to take their toll, squeezing the Kirax Dominion's supply chains and disrupting their economy. Yet, the true battle was only beginning. Admiral Vorek had doubled down on his rhetoric, positioning the sanctions as an existential threat to his people. His propaganda machine painted humanity as the architects of Kirax suffering, fueling outrage across their empire. Jiro entered, his face lined with concern. "We've intercepted new transmissions, Lara. Vorek isn't backing down. He's mobilizing fleets in the outer systems. The rhetoric has escalated into open threats." Lara exhaled, her mind racing. "He's pushing for conflict. He wants the Council to either fold under pressure or force us into a war we can't walk away from." Councillor Thill joined them, his expression grim. "The Council is divided. Some believe we should reinforce the sanctions with military deterrence, while others fear that escalating tensions will shatter the fragile peace." Lara weighed her words carefully. "If we position fleets at the borders, Vorek will use it as proof that humanity is an aggressor. If we do nothing, he gains momentum and rallies more allies to his cause." Jiro hesitated. "There's another development. The moderate Kirax factions we've been in contact with, some of them are now under investigation by Vorek's forces. He's purging anyone who speaks against his war." Lara's jaw tightened. "Then we have to act before he consolidates total control. If we let him silence opposition within his ranks, there will be no path forward except war." Thill nodded. "We need to make our move before Vorek forces the Council's hand." Lara stood, straightening her jacket. "We take a calculated risk. We make a direct offer to the Kirax moderates. If they want an alternative to war, they need to step forward now." Jiro hesitated. "And if they don't?" Lara's expression darkened. "Then Vorek wins, and the next move won't be ours to make." She convened an emergency session with the Council, making her case in measured but urgent tones. "We must give the Kirax people an option beyond war. I propose we authorize a protected diplomatic corridor for those within the Dominion who seek a different path. Let them know that if they oppose this war, they are not alone." The room erupted into debate, but Lara held firm. "This is our last chance to prevent a full-scale war. If we wait until Vorek has silenced all dissent, then we will face an empire united against us. Right now, they are fractured. Right now, there is hope." A vote was cast. The motion barely passed. Within hours, a secret transmission was sent to key Kirax figures, offering sanctuary and a neutral ground for negotiations. The response was swift and desperate. Several high-ranking Kirax officials, including a general once loyal to Vorek, requested immediate extraction. They carried intelligence that could shift the entire balance of power. Jiro's voice was tense as he relayed the next message. "They're being hunted. If we don't move now, they won't make it." Lara turned to the Council's security forces. "Deploy a rapid response team. Bring them in safely." The extraction was perilous. Kirax warships shadowed the fleeing defectors, nearly breaching the diplomatic corridor. But with careful maneuvering and precision, the mission succeeded. The defectors arrived at Harmony's edge, shaken but alive. General Kor, the highest-ranking defector, wasted no time. Vorek is planning something far worse than war. He intends to stage an attack on a neutral colony and blame humanity for it. If the Council hesitates, he will use it to justify a full-scale invasion. Lara's stomach clenched. How soon? Days. He already has the fleet positioned. She called an emergency meeting, laying the intelligence bare before the Council. We have evidence of a false flag operation. If we act now, we can intercept the fleet before it carries out the attack. Vorek's allies resisted. This is circumstantial. You expect us to act on the word of Kirak's traitors? Lara's voice sharpened. If we wait, millions could die. We stop this now, or we deal with the aftermath of our inaction. A final vote was cast. This time, the decision was swift. The Council authorized a joint task force to intercept the Kirak's fleet before it reached the colony. As the fleet engaged, the Kirak's forces, caught off guard by the Council's sudden unity, hesitated. Lara broadcast a final message to Vorek himself. You've lost the element of surprise, Admiral. Stand down. Vorek's face appeared on the holofeed, his rage barely contained. You think you've won, human? The Kirak's dominion does not bend. Lara met his glare. No, but it breaks. Look around you. Your own people have turned against this war. Surrender now, and we negotiate. Push forward, and you lose everything. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then, without another word, Vorek cut the transmission. Moments later, his fleet began retreating. The war had been stopped before it could begin. The Kirak's dominion, fractured and weakened, was forced to come to the negotiating table. Lara stood in the council chamber as the news spread. She had gambled everything on diplomacy, and against all odds, it had worked. As the weight of it all settled in, Jiro turned to her. You did it. She allowed herself a small, weary smile. For now.